A week after a second human case of bird flu was confirmed here in the United States, the U.S., Europe say they are now taking steps to acquire or manufacture avian influenza vaccines. The vaccines are to protect poultry and dairy workers, as well as vets and lab technicians. Now, this in turn could lower the threat of a person-to-person pandemic. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has said so far that risk is low. U.S. and European health officials are talking to vaccine maker CSL Seqirus. The H5N1 virus was first detected in U.S. dairy cattle back in late March. Okay, to tell us a little bit more about this and if we should be concerned about a possible bird flu outbreak is Dr. William Schaffner. He is a professor of Preventive Medicine at Vanderbilt University School of Medicine. Thanks very much for joining us. This is kind of interesting. Kind of bring us up to date on this because it came out in March, and we know that millions of birds have been affected. It spread to cattle. Now I read it has spread to alpaca, and obviously the concern spreading to some humans. And then could it continue to grow into a human-to-human outbreak?
Well, Sean, it is very interesting, certainly from a scientific perspective. There are many influenza viruses. We're familiar with the ones that infect us. Well, birds also have influenza viruses. They can't infect us. They don't know how to do that. Now, this bird flu virus has spread over a large part of the globe now, transmitted by migratory birds when they fly over. Now, it's gotten into some mammals. You mentioned alpacas. There's been foxes, mink, seals, and of course, in the news, dairy cows. So this is all very interesting, but it has not developed the genetic capacity to readily affect humans or spread from person to person. So far, it's an animal problem,
right,
but not a human problem, but one we're watching very carefully.
Yeah, but Dr. Schaffner, considering what we went through the last 3 years, you talk about any kind of influenza spreading, especially something from bird to possibly human, then human to human, and alarms and whistles go off. So how concerned should consumers be, should people out there be concerned about the possibility? And also, what about the food supply? I read that some 4 million chickens had to be slaughtered in, I believe it was Iowa, just recently because it had spread to that group of chickens.
Well, let's deal with both of those questions. The first thing is, it is a matter of concern to we professionals, the infectious disease doctors, and the public health community. It's also a matter of great interest, obviously, to agriculture, just as you say. Now, those chickens, they can be restored. We can get lots of new chickens back pretty quickly. Getting it into the dairy industry is another matter. This is something that's new. At the moment, no dairy product is hazardous to humans. All of that's pasteurized. For those people who are aficionados, who are favorites of raw milk, I would urge caution. So I think the general public can watch this at a distance and not be concerned, but leave the concern to us at the moment. And believe me, this is a worldwide surveillance system that's underway 365 days a year.
Yeah, and Dr. Schaffner, I think that you certainly got my attention early on when you called this a global problem, talking about how birds migrate, and that certainly makes sense. But let's elevate this just a bit. Let's talk a bit about the vaccinations that are out there or possibly out there or are being worked on. What are the current options versus vaccines that are being developed? Because we know both Europe and the United States very concerned about that right now.
So in anticipation that a pandemic bird flu vaccine may be necessary, the scientists have worked out the blueprint about how to make these vaccines very quickly. So all of that prep work, that preliminary work is already done. The blueprint's on the shelf. We'll pull it off and put it into manufacture if we have to do that. In the meantime, of course, the manufacturers are producing the regular influenza vaccine that we're all going to be using in September, October, and November this coming year. So we're making the regular flu vaccine while we're ready to switch at a moment's notice, if necessary, to make a pandemic bird flu vaccine.
Okay, let's talk about the risk out there about the possibility how this could affect consumers down the road. If we're losing millions of chickens, as you say, they can be replaced pretty quickly, pretty easily, but also moving to cattle stock, and then if it moves into the wild and birds continue to migrate, I think you see where this is leading. Some people could have some real concerns that this could just be a widespread outbreak that is very difficult to corral.
Yes. Now, mind you, in the wild, among those migratory birds, this bird flu variety and its antecedents, its ancestors, have been around for about 20 years. It's spreading more widely now, so it really has everyone's attention in the public health community.
Right.
We can't tell you whether or when or even if this virus will pick up this genetic capacity to spread to humans. It hasn't done so for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Your fingers are crossed and so are mine, and that's about all we can do scientifically, except put out a surveillance system. It's like a radar system. The moment something like that happens, we can spring into action, start making the vaccine and informing the public.
Dr. Schaffner, are you worried about people who over the past 3 years became really anti-vax, became very outspoken? I'm not going to get vaccinated. It's not necessary. They developed this too quickly. Let's move forward just a bit and kind of take this to a what if. Are you concerned about trying to convince people like, look, if this does break out, we do have the vaccine, how can you convince this skeptical public that this is safe and they need to be vaccinated?
Sean, you put your finger on it. Yes, I am concerned about that. And we in medicine, public health, infectious diseases, will have to reach out to you folks in journalism to get the word out in as clear and unambiguous, and we hope reassuring and comforting fashion as possible, so that some of those people who are skeptical and hesitant, we understand that, but by now, I hope people have understood that, for example, with COVID vaccines, we've given them the millions upon millions of doses around the world. They're extraordinarily effective and they're safe. And of course, we're all used to influenza vaccine. We get that each and every year.
Sure.
So the bird flu vaccine will be very similar to our annual influenza vaccine.
Well, Dr. Schaffner, you have my support. I still keep my vaccination card with me. I had COVID twice. Neither time was very punishing. So continue the wonderful work out there. And we cannot thank you enough for your time and your insight.
My pleasure.